Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Are you trying to hypnotize us?
You're going into a deep sleep.
You will identify your hidden emotion.
Hello. Hi, Rhonda.
Hi, David. That's your opera voice. And hi, Matt.
Hey, Rhonda. Hey, David. Great to be back with you.
Yeah. And welcome, everyone. This is episode 306. It's another Ask David with our beloved Matt. Yay.
Thank you.
And I actually do not have another endorsement to read because I'm sorry, I haven't been keeping track of them too much lately. So maybe we could just dive into our really exciting question that we teased everybody about last week.
Oh, wait.
Unless you have one.
But wait, I want to mention, I always forget to promote my workshops on the podcasts. And I have one on social anxiety, which a bunch of people asked about on the last podcast. Well, one person. That's the same as a bunch, I guess.
Right, because one person.
But it's going to be on October 2nd, which I believe is a Sunday. It's an all day from 8:30 to 4:30. It's with Jill Levitt, and to find it, just go to their website, the feelinggoodinstitute.com. And I think it's called Smashing Social Anxiety, Shame Attacking and Beyond. And it's primarily for therapists on how to treat social anxiety. It's going to be a really riotous and fun and wild presentation, I'm pretty sure. But the general public, you're invited to come as well. And we do speak English. We don't talk in psychobabble gibberish. And if you're struggling with social anxiety or know someone who is, you might find it a fun workshop. And then at the workshop, we'll announce a full day training program on social anxiety by one of our colleagues, Jacob Towery, that's going to be extremely inexpensive and really cool.
Really? That's so exciting.
Yeah. So there's some neat stuff coming up. So set for October 2nd. Is that right, Rhonda?
Yes.
And
because
if you're a shrink, you'll get, of course, I think 7 CE credits, and you'll learn a lot and you'll have a lot of fun. And it's not that expensive. I think it's like $135, and there's an early bird special where you can get like $108. I don't know if it's overdue already on that, but check it out, and we'd love to see you there.
Yes, and I wanted to mention again the Feeling Great book club that Brandon Vance started, and Heather Clegg is going to help him, and that's starting again in September 13th. And if people are interested in it, they've gotten there are 2 groups, one at 8:30 in the morning Pacific time and one at 5:00 p.m. Pacific time. So people from all over the world will hopefully find a time that fits them. And, it's very low cost, and they have a sliding scale fee. And again, we've gotten such great feedback from people who have completed the Feeling Great, who have attended and completed the Feeling Great book club. And if
what will happen to people? What will they get there for their $12 a week fee?
Well, they get to read the book together, and they get to practice the techniques that are discussed in the book, and they get to camaraderie and meet with other people who are doing the same thing.
Cool. So you actually get to learn and practice the techniques in that book, Feeling Great. That sounds like a darn good deal. I know they're going to have a lot of small group leaders, a lot of enthusiasm, and it's been great in the past, and it's only going to get greater. It's something I strongly recommend. Their goal is not commercial, but connecting with people who need the help.
Mm-hmm. And to sign up for it, you can go to feelinggreattherapycenter.com/book club.
Cool.
I'll put in a quick plug too. Jacob Towery is just a brilliant physician and a great personal friend of mine, and so a chance to hear from him is wonderful. And Brandon Vance, I know him personally, and he's got just a wonderfully warm, empathic way about him that I think is just sort of healing. He emanates this sort of healing energy. And then also there's another person out there I really admire and respect a great deal, Zaina Halim. Zaina is putting out a group that will go through the When Panic Attacks book and to help people with anxiety. And so keep your eyes out for that. Zaina's work is just brilliant and wonderful, and she has so much to offer people with anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
totally agree.
I forgot about that. I'm glad you mentioned that. And also, we're exploring the possibility of collaborating with Zaina in a group on social anxiety that will be integrated with our Feeling Good app. How does that sound, folks?
Really fun.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I sat in on an intensive with Jacob Towery in the early spring, and the person had social anxiety, and Jacob did an absolutely brilliant job of helping her overcome her social anxiety, and it was super fun.
How long did it take?
About 4 hours.
A colleague of mine went on a hike with Jacob and my colleague's fiance who had social anxiety. I won't name names. Do you know how long it took her to be cured?
No.
I don't either. I think he said it took about 10 minutes.
Uh-huh.
He did the positive reframing and a couple externalization of voices, and it was like magic. So cool. There's some fun stuff coming up. If
it's super fun.
Social anxiety like I have had, plagued. I love treating social anxiety for that reason.
Me too.
Let's dive in to Kevin's question. He asked you, "Hi, David, is it possible to have a healthy relationship with someone who can be classified as borderline? What are keys to being in a relationship with someone that exhibits some of these characteristics? Is it a lost cause? Is borderline personality disorder, pardon my language, bullshit and simply a result of assumptions such as I need love to be worthwhile, as indicated in your books? Best, Kevin."
Well, I'll let you two take first shot at this, and then if there's any loose ends, I'll add my own 2 cents. But it's a serious question, and it's politically sensitive, and it's a very important topic because even therapists have trouble sometimes relating to patients who have this classification, and does this disorder even exist, and et cetera. So you guys take it away.
Well, want me to try first, Matt?
Sure. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, Rhonda.
Well, I think people with borderline personality disorder, they often do have rocky relationships. And I think some romantic relationships present like a unique set of challenges for them and their partners. Because sometimes symptoms of borderline personality disorder can cause changes in emotions. And so, for example, somebody with, tell me if you think this is right, or if I'm climbing up the wrong tree, whatever the expression is. Sometimes somebody might be affectionate and doting, and then their emotional state might switch, and they might feel smothered or overwhelmed, and they might then push their partner away. And so it helps to be exceptionally caring and compassionate and affectionate. I think sometimes people with borderline personality are sensitive to abandonment or rejection. So I think, again, being centered and compassionate is always really helpful for someone, for any relationship, but especially for someone who's in a relationship with someone who has this diagnosis or is coping with these kind of cycle of emotions.
To help our listeners, would it be useful for us to say what borderline personality disorder is, since no one who's listening has any idea?
Sure.
What is it?
What is borderline personality? It's kind of a mental health disorder that affects the way people think and feel about themselves and others. And sometimes it causes problems in people's functioning because it includes self-image issues. People sometimes have difficulty managing or monitoring their emotions or their behavior. And sometimes there is a pattern of unstable relationships.
How would you define it, Matt?
Maybe first we could talk about what a personality disorder is. And so that's a cluster of different traits that's consistent over the person's lifespan that has significant impact on their functioning, their relationships, their mood, etc. And so in borderline personality disorder in particular, just agreeing with some of the things Rhonda is saying, is folks who exhibit extreme sensitivity to rejection. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like they have their rejection radar out there and are assuming that people are going to reject them. And oftentimes that can be very confusing. Very, very small, subtle gestures can result in another aspect of borderline personality disorder is impulsivity. Or reactivity and anger, and acting out of feelings in a way that is damaging to the relationship. And so typically what you see is sort of these stormy, tumultuous types of relationships. If there's features of borderline personality disorder in the folks in a relationship.
That was beautifully stated. And just a couple other characteristics is there's a lot of all or nothing thinking about other people. And when we would have somebody with this diagnosis, they would always appear just sweet and wonderful at the initial evaluation. And you can't imagine they had this diagnosis. But then we would tell ourselves and one another within 2 weeks, this person is probably going to become very rageful, and his or her view of you will go from 100 to 0, and they're going to be very angry and want to retaliate, and that was very true. And then they can also create tremendous anxiety in others because they often have suicidal attempts, suicidal urges, suicidal threats, as well as self-mutilation with cigarettes or cutting themselves. And another characteristic, which might sound uncharitable, but maybe is the tendency to manipulate other people. And I didn't really know what that meant, to tell you the truth, until just a few weeks ago. I guess everyone else knew, and I couldn't figure it out. But I think what it means is they maybe sometimes see people as objects to be manipulated. And then they get angry, when their manipulation isn't effective, as opposed to sharing feelings and developing, a deeper emotional connection that they're trying to get people to do something for them. And another, which it sounds uncharitable to say that, but maybe one of you can explain the manipulation concept a little better. And then also there's I can't remember what I was going to say.
Were you going to talk about splitting at all, or?
Well, yes, that's one of the terms. Yeah, explain that a little bit, Matt, because that's so central.
Sure. Yeah, I'll also mention it's the manipulation is usually to avoid rejection, or and so when folks have borderline personality disorder, you'll hear stories of like they'll break and enter to be with someone who's rejected them and go into, and it'll kind of freak that person out. They'll go to these desperate measures. And I don't know if that's what you mean by the manipulation.
Yeah.
I oftentimes think of the manipulation and objectification as more of an antisocial personality disorder trait, but you can see it. There's a lot of overlap in these. They're not perfect, buckets that people fall into, and they certainly don't describe everything about that person. Splitting is the idea that when they're idealizing and devaluing, right, one minute they're in love with you, the next minute they're hating you, that they'll often identify one person that is sort of bad and try to get everyone else to agree that that other person is bad by complaining about them or setting them up in some way.
That's right. Also, there's one other word that's used, and maybe this isn't answering the question, but maybe some of the listeners would want to know what this syndrome is, or at least how it's talked about. And that's the term, and I hate these big terms. I just figured this one out a few weeks ago too, projective identification. And Matt will now explain what that term means.
I have no idea what that one means. Help me understand.
You've heard it though, right?
I have heard it, yeah, but I don't remember what it means.
Oh, did you get it at all, Rhonda?
Projective identification?
Yeah. Do you know what it means?
Well, isn't it when you have thoughts about yourself or feelings about yourself and you're projecting them onto another person?
It could be something like that. Yeah, it's like, I think,
like especially negative thoughts or negative feelings about yourself.
Yeah, if you're hurting, then you're going to make the other your therapist hurt in the same way,
or your partner.
Yeah, or your partner. Oh, sure, absolutely. Well, this will probably get slammed because this sounds uncharitable, but these are people who are suffering and they need warmth and compassion and good treatment. And I published an article in Journal of Consulting and Clinical Psychology in the 1990s where we used a forerunner of Team CBT. It was really kind of more advanced CBT at the time. And they responded, their depression responded a little, just about at the same speed as people without borderline personality disorder. The journal didn't want to publish it at first because they thought it was an impossible result. But what happens, though, is that borderline personality disorder is an insulting, disparaging term. Because there's so much anger and angst associated with it and bad experiences that therapists have. And so what happens is when therapists have patients who don't respond and who they don't like and who they're mad at, they say, oh, this person is kind of a borderline or something like that. And it's a hurtful way to use language. At my clinic in Philadelphia, we diagnosed everyone at the initial evaluation using the SCIDS diagnostic system. And so that gave us a better, more objective classification of people who had this diagnosis, and 28% of our new patients had that diagnosis. And they responded about as quickly as anyone else, which was actually very encouraging, but we needed more empathy. And it was harder to develop an agenda with the patients. And one of the characteristics is what I call coercion sensitivity. And I think this is even more powerful than the rejection sensitivity, is that they don't like being told what to do. And so I've had patients with this diagnosis who told me that if I ever asked them to do psychotherapy homework, they'd commit suicide. And it's, that's a manipulation. They're trying to coerce me into not practicing in the way that I usually practice. And I'm sure they felt that I was trying to manipulate them, trying to coerce them. And these puzzles can be very difficult for therapists to find kind and effective solutions to. But I thought it was encouraging that our patients with this diagnosis did very well. Now, to come back to Kevin's excellent question, is it possible to have a healthy relationship with someone who can be classified as borderline personality disorder? Well, borderline personality disorder is something that exists on a continuum. It's not like a thing that you have like pneumonia. and it can be more severe and it can be less severe. And also a healthy relationship is also something that exists on a continuum. And you know, all relationships are healthy some of the time and troubled some of the time. But it would be especially challenging, I think, to have a romantic relationship with someone with borderline personality disorder. And you would have to be really good at using the 5 secrets, as well as humility and curiosity, because it's very hard not to get provoked in when you're having an interaction with someone with borderline personality. They fear rejection, but they kind of force people to reject them. And there was one other thing keeps going in and out of my brain. But what's your take on having a relationship with someone with that diagnosis, Rhonda? Because I know that you've sometimes had, you know, been victim of troublesome interactions with people with potentially similar diagnoses or even more severe diagnosis, and it's no fun to be in a really painful pattern. I might say, though, that a lot of men are attracted to women with borderline personality disorder. That's another kind of odd thing, but it's a very pronounced and real phenomenon.
Well, I'd love to hear what Matt has to say. I'm going to just say a few just minor things, but Matt gave much more complete picture. I think that I jotted some things down. I think caring for a partner with borderline personality disorder is easier if you understand what they're experiencing. So if you've actually got a confirmation of that as a diagnosis, it would help that you learn as much about it as you possibly can. Because when you understand what they're experiencing, that can help you respond in a way that both protects you from additional chaos and pain and protects the relationship. You also, you know, and I'd also, like I started to say, offer your partner understanding and patience, and what you said, David, becoming really expert at using the 5 secrets. It helps if you know your partner's triggers, because you could either help them avoid them, or you could cope with the triggers in a different way, alerting them about them, do some anger management techniques about walking away. And one of the things that you said, Matt, which I thought was super like right on, is understanding that when people do manipulate or split, it's done to avoid them, you know, it's done to avoid feeling rejected or avoid their anxiety and to feel safe. So to understand that manipulation isn't done in a sense of meanness, but of self-protection. And then finally, I would just suggest that people have to know their own limits about what they can accept and when they need to stop and take a break themselves.
I love what both of you are saying, and maybe I'll share one thought that has been helpful for me is to think of someone who's got borderline personality disorder, kind of like a person with like a burns all over their body, because they'll be so sensitive to rejection. And if you imagine attempting to get really close in a relationship to someone who's got burns all over their body, you're going to trigger their pain, and then you'll experience that, you know, they will express that pain, and often not in the way that we would like, not using the 5 secrets, but acting out, and so you can probably predict that you'll have a different type of relationship with someone who meets the criteria for borderline personality disorder than with someone who does not, because of that exquisite sensitivity.
What an incredible, you know, metaphor. I love that's so easy to understand when you put it that way.
It's not mine. But I don't know where I borrowed it from. I wanted to offer Kevin some empathy, because what I'm hearing in his question, kind of reading between the lines, is that he's probably feeling sad and worried and hopeless about his relationship, and maybe even angry and scared. If his partner does have borderline personality disorder, they could have treated him really, really poorly. And and he might be having thoughts like, this relationship will always be terrible, or they're going to continue to hurt me and disrespect me and treat me badly, or this is their fault. They have borderline personality disorder. He could be blaming, and that would be part of the problem, but also a place where we could offer some empathy for Kevin. I feel for him, and I hope he's getting the empathy that he needs. I think we would also have more to offer than just empathy. We have excellent methods within the team model to alleviate any upsetting feelings he's having. Like, does he feel like maybe he's worthless because he's being treated this way? We could help him with that. Or is he anxious and scared or hopeless, etc.? Would he want to feel differently? And one thought I have on that is that there would be a lot of reasons for him not to want to feel differently about it, and why he might want to feel hopeless, and that could be kind of driving a decision on his part to end the relationship. And so I would also consider, using the decision-making form, interpersonal decision-making, to come to terms with this hard decision and see what's really right for him right now.
Where would he find that decision-making tool?
David, I believe you've generously made that available online, and there's a version of the decision-making form online.
Yeah, on the homepage of feelinggood.com, right down at the bottom of the homepage, there's a free book chapter offering there. If you click there, you'll actually get 2 free book chapters, and one of them is how to use the decision-making tool. That's a great thought, Matt, because that's going to be a difficult decision. Well, I hope we've handled this reasonably sensitively. I'm sure that people, we have a lot of listeners who probably have been told that they have borderline personality disorder, and I think that people with that disorder are often kind of given a bad rap, so to speak, and I want to try to project that they're suffering tremendously and deserve and need tremendous patience and compassion. We had to really work with the 5 Secrets in Philadelphia, and working with individuals when they get mad to use the 5 Secrets as best as we possibly could. And that was often transformative for ourselves and the patients that we were treating. It was challenging to treat these individuals, but also profoundly, in many cases, profoundly rewarding.
Yeah, I would say it's far from hopeless. Just to piggyback on something you were saying, David, you pointed out that there's a spectrum here, and maybe we all fall on the borderline spectrum at some point.
Oh, yeah.
I know that I go through phases where I'm very borderline-y and sensitive to rejection and feeling worthless and blaming people and angry. And so, and then I think there's also a spectrum of, in terms of like skills interacting with someone who has borderline personality disorder, and that we can always improve those skills. We can become increasingly skillful at talking to people when they're feeling rejected and worthless,
and when they're angry at us,
and
blaming us and telling us that we're no good.
Yeah, the 5 Secrets would be a good skill set to learn there.
Yeah, advanced 5 Secrets to be really, really good at it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That just really warmed my heart. What you said, Matt, giving Kevin all that empathy. That was really beautiful. And so,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, Brittany asked, how do you deal with the injustice of people who rip you off without giving you credit? Which I think that you probably have a lot of experience with that, David, unfortunately.
Yeah.
She wrote, "Hi, David. I hear you say often how it upsets you that people use your work and don't give you acknowledgement or credit for it. I wonder how you deal with your thoughts like the unfairness or injustice of it. Or maybe you don't want to deal with those thoughts because the anger helps you in some way. Like it motivates you to create more content and host more trainings, etc., so people know the ideas come from you. I was just curious. I deal with similar issues at work where I work. I deal with similar issues at work where I work really hard for an outcome. And then once it happens, other employees will take credit for it or just plain ignore the fact that I played any role. I think hearing how you deal with not getting acknowledged would help me too. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, Brittany.
Well, that's a neat question. I appreciate that, Brittany. And I'm sorry that you're getting used in this way. There's an awful lot of that goes on in our culture, even in graduate school. People will be used by professors to use the PhD students to do all kinds of slave labor, and then the professor's name ends up first on a paper that the professor had almost no role in, and it's very understandable to feel used and angry, and then I think in any business setting, probably women get used by men to quite a tremendous degree, and it is fair and it is unjust. I once asked Albert Ellis about this this question. I never knew him well. I had only a few interactions with him, but always very positive. I really adored him, and thought his contributions were vast and somewhat underappreciated, and I thought he was ripped off an awful lot by people. And once he invited me and a colleague from my clinic in Philadelphia, Tony Bates, a charismatic Irishman who spent some time at my clinic, and he just said, David, would you like to, come up and spend a day at my center in Philadelphia? And you can bring a colleague along if you want. And boy, we got on the train and we went up there, and he was just very, very gracious. And he took us out to lunch and showed us his institute there. He was just it just blew our mind because he was like super famous at the time, and we were pretty zeros from that perspective. But at any rate, he said, "Are there any questions you guys want to ask us?" And I said, "Well, I know you get ripped off all the time, and like Wayne Dyer, the late Wayne Dyer, and he wrote this book, Your Erroneous Zones, that was the #1 bestseller, and he made his whole career off that book. But he went. I said he went to one of your workshops, a day workshop on rational emotive therapy that you had developed, then just took your stuff, changed the words a little bit, and presented it as his own. And I said that's starting to happen to me now too. And I'm wondering, how do you handle it? Don't you get really angry with these people? And he said, "Well, David," this is the way he talked. He had that New York twang. "No, well, David, no, I never experience anger. I just tell myself they're doing what they should do." And I said, "Well, what do you mean they're doing what they should do?" He says, "Well, they're assholes, and that's what assholes do." But I knew he was pissed off. He was just denying it. So I won't answer the question like that. I'll say, yes, it does piss me off. Woebot and all of these websites all over the world, they're copying my work. There's thousands of apps out there based on my work without giving me credit. The list of 10 distortions in my Feeling Good book. One colleague just took it and published them in her book, just verbatim, and put her copyright on it as if she had made them up. It was just outrageous. And it pisses me off. I once when I was learning cognitive therapy, I offered to make a video of a live session for Dr. Beck for his center, because he was just getting started, and I was thinking he can sell this videotape and raise some money for his center, and they were trying to get a bunch of videotapes, and so it was on test anxiety. And I thought it was a terrible session at the time, but apparently when people saw the videotape, they thought it was fantastic. That was another thing where your anxiety, when you're anxious and insecure, your perspective gets all bent out of shape. But I guess it was an excellent session. But then I was shocked, and somebody said, "Have you seen this proof of one of Dr. Beck's new books. And there was the transcript of that session that I had with this woman, as if it was Dr. Beck's work.
Oh, wow.
There was no mention that this is the work of one of my students, Dr. David Burns, who's graciously allowed us to show how you can use cognitive therapy to treat test anxiety. And it really enraged me. And I saw a lot of that now. And then I've seen people just, all over the world copying my stuff. They say, well, plagiarism is the best form of flattery. And so I guess I'm lucky in a way that so many thousands and tens of thousands of people and websites are plagiarizing my work in a variety of ways. But how I deal with it, to be honest with you, I just try to ignore it. For a while, I was paying a company $12,000 a year to send out takedown messages to people. And to tell you the truth, it didn't work. Most of them, they just ignored it. And then the company said, well, there's really nothing we can do about it unless they take their stuff down voluntarily. But it pisses me off. The Catholic diocese in Boston, somebody said they're using your therapist toolkit for hundreds of therapists, and they haven't purchased it from you, and they haven't paid you any royalties or anything. And they were just so defensive. They just threw attorneys at me when I tried to challenge them at it. And I went to my attorney and said, well, you can fight it, but it'll just cost you a lot of money. And you probably win the case, but it'll just cost you a lot of money. And so I've just decided to move forward with my life. Here I've got Matt May, one of the greatest therapists in the world, Rhonda Borovsky, a great therapist and leader and fantastic human being to hang out with. And what could be better than that? And I have money in the bank. I can support my family. I'm creating this app with Jeremy Carmel and a small group of amazing people where we think we're going to change the world with the app we're creating. And I'm just trying to plow ahead and do the things that are fun for me, and to hang out with my cat and my beloved Rhonda, and who's sick today, but she's doing beautiful for all of us in spite of being sick and in bed all day yesterday, and to be here with Matt. And there's just so much to be grateful for. And a lot of people have said, well, that colleague of yours, this famous colleague who has printed my 10 distortions in her book, which I won't name the book, but I talked to a colleague who was a psychologist with a knowledge of ethics and law. And he said, you've got a perfect lawsuit against her, an ethics complaint. But I never did because I don't want to absorb myself in all of that energy. And here I get to vent, do a little venting right now, and say, yeah, I'm pissed off at all of you people. And when I went to college at Amherst, plagiarism was not acceptable. I think the president of Harvard was fired because they found that he plagiarized something in an article he wrote. We just took a lot of the words from an article that had already been published. And it was considered pretty damn shameful. And I've always had my own ideas. I don't need to plagiarize anyone else's. In Feeling Good, I mentioned Aaron Beck 37 times. I credited him for this and that and everything I could think of. Because when I'm presenting someone else's work, I'm proud to give them credit and make them shine, make them look good. But anyway, that's my take on it.
David, do you need me to go rough some people up for you?
Yes, I do.
All right, we'll break some kneecaps.
And we'll go together. We'll bring Ron as a karate expert. The three of us can go together.
We'll put her at the front of the line.
Yeah, that's right. And I had 6 months of karate when I was in college, so I can so remember.
You have that tough
hand.
Warrior spirit, yeah.
Yoko Getty.
I just wanted to express my gratitude to you, David. you've dedicated your life to improving the lives of others, and you've done that in spite of this plagiarism and stealing of your intellectual property. You've produced 12 books that I'm aware of, I think hundreds of research articles, and the most prescribed book for depression. And then you continue to donate your time and offer training seminars, and the free seminar through Stanford that you offer. You're really an inspiration, and I feel so grateful to you for doing that, despite all these jerks out there who want to steal from you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Matt. It's music to my ears.
Yeah, I ditto that. I couldn't say it any better.
Well, the old clock says 3:13, and we only got through 2 questions on this show. But I thought that borderline question was really a good one. We'll answer one more question. Paul, is there any way to know if I've done the hidden emotion technique correctly? And the answer is mine and Matt's is the same. Yes, if you get a whoosh of, wow, my anxiety just disappeared, then you'll know that you did it correctly.
Yeah.
I had somebody I was working with somebody who had a lot of anxiety and kind of obsessive thoughts. And we did the hidden emotion, and his hidden emotion is exactly what you said, David. He was being really nice, and he wasn't sharing his feelings with people. He wasn't being assertive. So we did some assertiveness training, practicing. And then he started sharing his real true feelings to people. And lo and behold, his anxiety and obsessive thoughts just kind of dissipated. It felt like a miracle to him. And me too.
Yeah, it is a kind of miracle.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. That's why we love this line of work. And it's great to have tools that work, because there's no greater joy than seeing someone go from tremendous despair of depression, anxiety, guilt, shame, inadequacy, hopelessness, anger, and so forth, and suddenly go to joy. And when that whoosh thing happens, it's usually pretty sudden and very dramatic. And to see someone go from literally from sobbing to laughter within a single therapy session, there's nothing more rewarding and mood elevating than that.
Right. It creates joy for us too. Tons of it.
Yep. That's the most meaningful part of my work.
Yeah. Which again, we kind of have you to thank for that, David, because so you're able to give, you've taught us how to give joy to our clients, and then that increases our joy in life too. So we have so much to thank you for. Yeah,
well, you're very welcome. It's as the French would say, avec plaisir, mademoiselle, or whatever, and monsieur, or whatever. I took French in high school, I took French in college, and I stunk it up in both locations.
Well, murky buck-ups to you, David.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, so we're saying bye for now?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone, for listening, and thank you, Matt, for coming on again.
And happy healing to you, Rhonda, and to your son, too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Got COVID.
All righty. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye-bye.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borofsky, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.